Hey, welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling with me, David Green, and with me today is Kimberly T. Hennessy. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Excellent. So you're from Montreal. When I saw that you were from that area, I was expecting to I was like, maybe I need to brush up on my French before you come on.
Well, we're bilingual, so it's a bilingual country. So yes, you will encounter people that only speak French, but there are few people that only speak French, especially if you go in the big centers. The rest of Canada, they have pockets of French-speaking people, but the majority is English speaking. So we kind of had to adapt here in Montreal, well, Quebec in general. And,
Yeah.
it's the language of the world, English. So yeah, so we try, but there's still a few people there that that don't want to to speak
Yeah.
English. Yeah,
It's the same in Ireland, not with French, but there's pockets of
Gaelic.
people that speak Gaelic. Yeah. And where I live, if you just go, so I live just outside of Galway city, which isn't really a city. It holds about 80,000 people, so it's
Yeah,
a small town, but
small
we call
town.
it
Yes.
city. We let them pretend. But if you just go west of there, you go into a place called Connemara, where it is all the road signs are all in Gaelic, and most of the
Really?
people will speak Gaelic. Yeah, and you go out to some places where they only speak Gaelic, which everyone else isn't really Irish, but they are.
But they are. Well, I was surprised when I went to Ireland to see that. Well, so you had the English, like let's say in the subways and the metros and all those public transportation, and you'd have the Gaelic translation, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like I didn't realize that people still like that's
Yeah,
kind of ignorant of me, but I didn't realize that it was still like a living, breathing language, like
yeah,
people spoke it. So I was
yeah.
pleasantly surprised.
They try. Like it's one of those things. It kind of fell out of use in a big way, like a few decades ago, and then it was one of those things where they're like, we want to try and bring it back and teach it again. Um, my wife speaks Irish, and a lot of her family do, but they speak it differently as well, depending on how it's been taught. And then
It,
if you listen to people that are speaking, like I used to live in Manchester in the UK as well, which is quite close to Wales, and I used to work in a place called Chester, which is like on the Welsh border. So it's actually English, but it's on the Welsh border, so you get loads of Welsh people there. And they were doing the same thing. They were trying to bring back speaking
their
Welsh,
language.
and
Mhm.
you'd listen to them speak, but there would be words that they don't have in Welsh anymore, so they just start speaking English, then back in Welsh. And I was like, I remember the first time I heard two Welsh people talking to each other, and I was like, "Am I drunk?"
What's happening?
I kept on hearing this English coming in, and I was like what? What did I bang my head or something? I just can't understand half of what they're saying.
Well, and especially Welsh is like, I don't know, just like looking at it, like I know Irish Gaelic also is difficult, like visually to understand how to say it, but
Mm,
for some reason it all like Welsh seems like there's only consonants in
yeah,
the and it's just like what?
yeah, and loads of L's for everything.
Yeah,
And the L makes like a noise, which is kind of
yeah.
weird. And they're really long names as well. I think there's a train station that has like the longest place name in the world or something. And
Is
it's
it?
just,
Oh my God, I
yeah,
have to
yeah.
look that up.
But, it's a funny. I love Wales, and it's we'll start talking about books and your books in a
No
second.
problem.
But I'm a big fantasy fan, and obviously I write fantasy as well. And one of the reasons that I kind of got into fantasy in the first place was because of Wales, because of living so close to it with like I mean, Arthurian legend is all around England, but it has a big root and basis
In
in
Welsh.
Wales. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was one of the big kind of things that I was reading as a kid was all that kind of stuff. And there's loads of castles in Wales still that you can go and visit, and there's loads of really good legends and everything.
Yeah.
So it was like yeah, it's a really nice place. Also as well in Chester, it's an old Roman city, so still has the walls and
Oh,
everything. And there's
nice.
there's still a law in Wales where you're allowed to if you can kill a Welsh person between the hours of midnight and 6, as long as you shoot them with a bow and arrow off the walls of Chester. So that's legal.
That's that's still a law.
Yeah, it's like it's
Well, I
not
mean,
Yeah, it's one of those weird laws that no one's just gone around to just eradicate yet, but it's still,
Right. Isn't that funny, huh? Oh
yeah,
yeah, no, well, my book is definitely inspired by my Irish roots, and I was definitely inspired by Welsh. A lot of the names in my book are Welsh inspired, and I was like, should I, shouldn't I? Because I knew that people reading it would be like, how am I saying this name? And I was like, you know what?
yeah,
Screw it. I'm writing this book for myself, and if I connect with it, one other person will connect with it. And so, yeah, I was definitely like you, inspired by the Arthurian feel. And yeah, from my research, I didn't realize, but they were saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if I read it wrong, but they were saying like, even like King Arthur might be like from Welsh roots, and yeah. So there was all that thing, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So yeah, I like you definitely enjoy the history and all that. Unfortunately, we don't live in a country that's terribly old, so I definitely have to go and and
yeah,
and and
yeah.
and get my research from my roots.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I see. I mean, I personally don't mind. Like, you get a lot of like this kind of stuff from like America and Australia in particular, where you'll have authors that will write stuff that's based on like European culture or mythology, or and then particularly like when people start going into like kind of Fae, which is like a lot of Irish and Welsh stuff, and like you get some people that are like, well, that's our culture and all this kind of stuff, but as you said, like a lot of places like North America and Australia, they're not particularly old countries, and a lot of the
No.
people that are from there are from here, like are
Yeah.
from so it is also their heritage too.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. Because I think the oldest, so where I'm from, the oldest church is like maybe 350 years old, which
Right.
is super young when you
Yeah.
think about, you're surrounded by Roman stuff. So it's
Yeah,
like, okay, we're
yeah,
like babies, we're in our infancy.
yeah.
So we definitely have to go but it's weird because the thing is like, so I'm 1/6 Irish, and I proudly, have my name, and I wear it proudly. Hennessy for me is a big part of my identity, but it's like 1/6 of who I am. I think my grandmother was Scottish, so I'm actually maybe more Scottish
Right.
than, Irish, but I wear the Irish name. So that has really, and so, as much as I'm like super far from Ireland, super, we don't have the same cultural, like we weren't raised the same, obviously, and everything, but yet because I wear the name, I still feel like a big part of me is connected to my roots, and that's important, and I think people are realizing that with all these movements happening now, and like you said, they want to bring back Gaelic, they want to bring back Welsh, it's because we want to remember where maybe we were from, and because it's important, or it makes us feel connected maybe in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was important to me.
Cool. That's great. It's great that it colours your work. And also Hennessy, they make great whiskey as well. I don't know if you know, you do know that,
Yes,
obviously.
yeah. So I know we do, and unfortunately, I have no stakes in the company at all. So
Yeah,
that's
that'd be nice,
too
wouldn't
bad.
it? Some great uncle one day goes, you know what? You are actually part of this dynasty, and this we've not been given your share for the last while. Here's a
That
check.
would be amazing. We'll put it out there in the universe, and maybe it'll hear me.
Yeah. So before we talk about your book in particular, obviously you touched on some of your inspiration there. Were you always an avid reader? And did you always want to write?
I wasn't always an avid reader, and I didn't always want to write. In fact, I studied to do everything else but write, but I've always written. So
Right.
I've always, like, I was that kid in high school that when there was like a term paper, everybody was like, and I was like, yay. I always enjoyed writing, but I never really thought that I could do it as a career. I wasn't geared towards that, but I was like that kid, because I remember I was watching and this is going to date me, but when I was a teenager, The Doors came out. The movie The Doors by Oliver Stone came out, and I was like mesmerized by Jim Morrison, the poet. And I was like, oh my God, he's so cool. And today I'm like, poor guy, he was just like drug addict, you know.
Yeah.
But at 15, I kind of idolized him. And I would, like him, I would carry like this notebook, and every time I had like a poem or thoughts, or I would jot down in my little notebook, and I thought I was really cool with that. But yeah, no, I wasn't the type to, because so when you had these mandatory readings in school, and you'd have to read these books that they gave you, it was like that was enough for me in high school. It wasn't until I read again in high school the book Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World, that kind of shifted for me. I was like, oh wow, this is really, really cool. And I really enjoyed the genre, and I was just like transported into this futuristic kind of world. And I was really, really impressed, and it really caught my attention. But it didn't go any further than that, because then I was really geared to go to university. So I went and I studied psychology, and that's what I wanted to do. But then when I graduated from that, I was like, I need to take a break. I need to reflect. I need to know where I'm going. And I started traveling. And that's when I no longer had mandatory readings, that I kind of got into reading. So I remember reading in Europe, Lord of the Rings, and that's what I was kind of, that's when it was kind of shaping up for me. And because I didn't have term papers to write anymore, then I kind of felt the need to write, but more creative stuff. And so it's basically around like 25 that I was like, you know what, I want to try my hand at writing a book. And that's where it kind of evolved. But I've always written, but it was like term papers and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's one of the things that will like destroy anyone's passion in something, is when you're forced to do it.
Yeah, that's it. When you're forced to read, and I remember reading like these books that they would give us, and I just couldn't get through them. And I was just like, oh my God, this is terrible. But then luckily, like Brave New World, that was a mandatory reading. And by chance, that clicked for me. So I was like, okay,
it's a great book. Did you see the TV show for it that came out?
No, I haven't, because I don't know if you are like me, but I feel like we're getting gypped. Before, we used to have cable, and we used to have all these TV shows on cable, but now you have to become a subscribe to like Hulu, Netflix, Disney. So at some point it's like, okay, it's too much. We're getting gypped.
Yeah. There's more in the States than there is over here, because we don't get Paramount, and we don't get a few others. So I think Brave New World was on one of them that we don't get, or I'm not sure how it's somewhere else. And I'm like, because we basically have like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, and with Disney we get Hulu as well. They just put everything into it because we don't have Hulu. So we get like a better version of Disney, which is really weird, because we generally don't get better versions of anything over here.
Well, I'm surprised, because I have Disney, but I don't think I have Hulu on it. So Hulu's not included.
Yeah, it's because we don't have Hulu. So Disney were like, when they brought all the Fox,
they package it.
They were like, we'll just throw it all on there, and if you're over 18, you've got access to all this other stuff, and it's the same price, which is really weird. And I kind of keep wondering what they're going to take away from us at some point.
At some point,
they'll come and knock on the door, and they'll be like, you owe us something here for this, because we don't have it. Yeah, so I'm not sure what that one is on, because I remember reading that one. I've read it a few times, and it was one of the kind of real eye-opening stories. It wasn't a mandatory reading one for us. We had to read stuff like Canterbury Tales was one of ours that we had, and like I can just, to this day, I can't stand it. Like I can't even. But one of my favorite books of all time is based on it, which is Hyperion by Dan Simmons, and it's the same structure as the Canterbury Tales, but like a sci-fi version of it, and I love it. It's one of my favorite books of all time. But I hate Canterbury Tales.
It's so funny. But you see, like you said, if you're like forced to read it, and especially if you're like forced to read it before you're ready to read it, you know?
Yeah,
So I know like I matured, like I was kind of immature in my teens and I had ADHD. So for me to sit down and read like really tedious and things like oddly for weirdly though, because Shakespeare was mandatory, that I could sit down and read. Weird. Maybe it's because I don't know why I could read Shakespeare, but anything else, if it was like, if there was no, maybe because I really enjoy story. So
right.
however it's written, I might, I don't mind it as long as the story really captures me. So Shakespeare has the best stories, right?
Yeah.
So, but I remember like I was reading, it was like this French book. Anyways, I forget the title. And it was like, and I chose it because it was really thin, but it was like the worst mistake
Right.
ever because there was no story. And I was just like, oh, this just is never going to
Yeah.
end. And it took me forever to read it. So I
Yeah.
wasn't ready, I wasn't ready to read that. I'm
Yeah.
sure today I would find more meaning to it, And I remember a teacher, I remember reading, was it called? I forget. The Stranger by Albert Camus. And I took that thinking, that'll be interesting. Oh my God. And the teacher's like, you're not ready for this book at all. I was like, you're right.
Yeah. I think I was similar to you in the fact the reason that I didn't like the Canterbury Tales so much was because it wasn't finished. And
Right.
I'm one of these people that it really, really, it's not that I don't like something, my brain cannot cope with something that isn't finished.
Right. I'm
So
the same.
yeah, so I was reading this thing. It's like it's not finished. Like, and this isn't what the guy wanted, right? He probably would have done something else, and I was like, I could never like comprehend. I was like, this is just it's not real.
It's not
Right?
real.
It's not real. It's not finished, right? And what was he
Yeah.
doing all of his life not to finish this book? Like, I mean, it's a book, like, right? And that's what I used to think when I was a child. Um, but yeah, so I like longer things like never used to bother me. Like I read Lord of the Rings when I was 11.
Wow.
And
Okay.
like I was always into reading. Like so, I have the same copy of The Hobbit that I was given when I was 7. And
Wow. Okay.
I have my name written inside it and my address from when I was like that, and my age is what you did.
Oh, so sweet.
So I want to give it to my son when he's a little bit older. Like, let's see if he wants to read it. So I was in when I went to secondary school. They had a library and they had Lord of the Rings there. And it was the first one that came out. And I remember again in English, like we were able to pick when I was about 14 or something. We were able to pick from a list of books to read, and it was like a few things that I thought didn't sound great, which when I got older, I was like, I have read and really enjoyed. But one of them was The Count of Monte Cristo, and I
All
thought, oh,
right.
read that. That sounds interesting. And the teacher was like, this is quite a big book, and I was like, fine, don't worry.
I can do it.
Yeah, I went to check it out in the library. I'm like, the librarian brought out this big book like this. I was like, oh my god. Well, at least it was finished, so I didn't really mind that much, So
It was done. It was complete. So I'm good.
yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So so at 25 you decided I'm going to write a book. So
Yeah.
did that happen
No,
right
it
away?
didn't.
No.
No, it didn't. No, because then I got married. I went to work. I had kids, and I thought that I could write a book with kids, and I realized that I couldn't because the kids would pull me. So when, like for me, writing a book, I have to have at least 2 hours where I can go in, concentrate for 2 hours, and then pull out and do whatever.
Right.
And but with kids, I was constantly being interrupted, and I'd like have 15 minutes, and that was it, So or half an hour at the most. So it wasn't ever enough to be able to edit, and correct and create. And I was just like, how am I going to get to write anything? And so I kind of switched gears, and I started writing scripts. So I wrote my first script because that didn't require me to have big chunks of time. I could go in, it was easy to edit, even if I was getting, bothered with my kids, I could, be distracted and then come back to the script, and I didn't need to re-immerse myself into the book or the script, so to speak. And so I wrote my first script, and then I decided, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go and study screenwriting and develop this craft, thinking it would be easier, but it wasn't at all, because to actually get the script into development and to filmmaking, it was just, and I didn't know the first thing about budgets and stuff. So I wrote this script, which was like a $20 million script,
Yeah.
So that was part of the reason why I went and studied filmmaking, and I understood about budgets and everything like that. But then what happened is that, now I knew how to write a script within budget and write something simple and a good story. It's just that to produce it, it took me away again from my family. So I was just like, this is really hard. So I had developed a few scripts. I worked with the team and everything. And then I once my kids were back in school, I kind of switched gears once more. So I kind of devoted like 10 years to script writing, only to go back and realize that what I really enjoyed was reading a book and seeing it on the screen. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to write my book that I've always wanted to write, and I'm going to do that. And then I'll see if I can develop it maybe into a film someday.
Yeah.
And so that's how, so it took me like 15 years to get to where I am now. And so it took me 15 years to write my first book.
You went a long way around it, exploring different things, like Stephen Erickson did, a fellow Canadian who did the Malazan series. His first book in his series, he wrote as a board game at one point, and then a screenplay, and then he got it into a book, and now he has, I see it, like 20 books in the same series, right? Because the thing is as well, like you said before about budget, there's no budget for writing a book. The only limit is your imagination. It's when you try to adapt it, but that's when there's the problem, because it's like, how much will this cost? I've done it the other way around, because I did film at university, so I've done screenwriting too, and I've adapted not my own stuff, but I have adapted fantasy projects, and there's one that's being developed at the moment, which is like from the script, which but it's one of those things. I was talking to someone recently, and I was like, fans of this series are not going to be happy with the adaptation, because some of them expect a one-for-one reproduction, because they don't understand that whole, like, what this is on the page. This one chapter could probably cost about 50 million
well, that's it. It's just like, there's lasers happening, you're on the water, there's fog everywhere, it's raining, there's thunder, and you're like, shit, this is going to be expensive.
Like 2,000 named characters in your series. It's like, because I'm a big Wheel of Time fan, so I'm really enjoying the adaptation at the moment. And again, I come from a thing where it's like, they're two different things. I understand that they're not going to be the same, but I think it's generally well received. But there's a quite a loud minority of book fans that just are like, this never happened. They stopped in like 15 towns before they arrived here, and it's like, well, yeah, they can't afford to build 15 towns.
That's it. And they don't understand, because me too, I'm watching, I haven't read the books. I do plan on reading them, but for me right now, I'm enjoying the series, and I find it's fine. But I did see a pocket of fans going like, I had to stop watching it, it's just not the same as the books, and I don't understand, like, one of the characters, he was funny, and now he's like dark, apparently. I forget his name anyways, and I'm like going in my head, I'm like, yeah, well, maybe they had to combine, or they had to, because apparently there's maybe a character missing, and I'm like, well, maybe they decided to.
There's more than one character missing. There is.
Yeah.
Like, there is, like, when I said 2,000 characters, that's that was weird. It's like there's 2,467 named characters in the whole series. It's like they're going to use one or two. Like,
Yeah, you're going to be missing a couple. Well, that's
yeah,
it. And they don't understand the logistics behind all of that, and just how fast it goes up. When I was
yeah,
writing my script, we were in the first script. I mean, we were in the bush. There was just all these like 100 people fighting. It's at night,
yeah,
and like when the guy, the director was reading it, he's like, there's
yeah.
just no way we're going to be able to do this. It's like $20 million movie. And I'm like, really?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's when I
yeah.
started learning about, budgets and
Costs
stuff.
and everything. And that's one of the things that you don't think of as if you're just writing books, right? Because, and there's the other thing as well. I presume that your books are written quite cinematically because you have that, you come from that school of thought where, so you have
Yep.
some things like, and that makes me laugh as well, being a Wheel of Time fan, because I've seen some people say, oh, they're cinematic books. They're not cinematic books. They're not,
Okay.
with it in mind whatsoever. You do get people that write with it in mind, where it's like smaller character counts, transitions between scenes, and you kind of, I don't know about you, but the way that I write is that I picture something in my head and then I
Yeah,
write that scene as if
exactly.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Where some people don't do that and they write like basically inside the character's head, and they're just like very introspective kind of stuff,
Well,
which could
I was accused of not having enough characterization
right,
in my books because it is so visual. And
right,
so they
right.
said that I had great, like some of the reviews that I got, it was like great world building, but the
Mhm.
characterization, and that's because in scripts you can't be in someone's head. You have to kind of
Yeah,
show.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so for me it was clear as day when I was writing it. I was like, this is obvious, he's doing this because he's suffering, and for me it was like I could see the character doing whatever he's doing or she's doing because there was a reason behind it. For me, the backstory was clear, not clear because I didn't write it down, but it was obvious. Anyways, it was obvious to me because I thought I was really showing it and demonstrating. And some reviewers preferred being in the character's head, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't used to that. I'm used
yeah.
to displaying it on the screen. And like you said, it's extremely cinematic in the sense that, like you, I have, and that's what's hard about it, because I have certain scenes that are so clear, but they're not necessarily the first scenes. So sometimes I'll be writing a scene without even knowing how we got to that scene, but it's just so clear that I have to write it, or I'll holding back just so that at some point when I get there, I'm like, yay, we're at this scene now, and I can finally write the scene that I've been, that triggered the whole thing, for
Yeah, yeah,
example,
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
triggered the whole story. So that's kind of my process as well, where I have these really vivid scenes and I kind of build around those scenes. And it's very, 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 and like you said, every time I finish a chapter, I finish like on that cliffhanger so that we
Yeah,
can kind of get into the next chapter. It's just,
yeah, yeah.
that's how
Mm.
I write,
Yeah, it's I think it's a more modern way of writing stories.
Yeah.
I think, and there's a divide like around. I think I'm not a huge Game of Thrones fan. I enjoyed the TV series, but George Martin was someone who worked in TV and film for decades, and like I think he
Yeah.
was one of the very first big kind of speculative fiction, other than Stephen King, that was like wrote in that specific style, which was like, there's a different way of telling a story that's in like fantasy or sci-fi, and he kind
Yeah.
of approached it in that kind of way. Um, anyway, we should talk about She Runs with Wolves.
Oh,
we've,
sure.
got, we've talked about everything else. So She Runs with Wolves is available now on Amazon. It's book one of the Program War series.
Yeah.
You have a permanent free kind of
Yeah.
prequel to it as well.
Prequel. Yeah. The
So
digital
tell us
prequel.
about it. What's this book about?
So that's the $1 million question. And I always end up rambling on this
Um,
because it's just, I don't know. like someone said, I'm really bad at the elevator pitch here, so bear with me. So basically, it's about this young woman. Well, it's not a young woman, because part of the reason why I wrote this book is because I really love. Now I'm missing the words, but like, let's say like Jane Austen books, coming of age books, right?
Right,
So
right,
I
okay.
really enjoyed these coming of age books. But as I got older, I was like less and less connected to the female protagonist, because I was getting older with the same questions and she was staying younger, you know? And I was
Right,
just like,
okay. Yeah.
so I couldn't connect with the protagonist anymore, because I felt like, well, I'm getting older and I still have the same damn questions and I'm still confused. And, you know, now I'm pregnant with kids, well, pregnant and gonna have babies, and I still haven't got it all figured out. And yet this young person, you know, after a year of her life, she gets married to Darcy, and she's got it all figured out, and she's not even 18 yet. So I was like, what? That doesn't make sense. So it was important for me to have a protagonist that was of a certain age. So Ira is between the ages of, let's say, 28 and 32. So she's in around that area, and she is very vulnerable, very confused, and she has been under the King Lorcan's thumb for like the past 20 years. And she doesn't know why. He's cruel to her. He's not nice with her. And she's been a victim of his cruelty for the past 20 years. And now she's pregnant, and she doesn't want that for her kid. So she's like, I have to get out of here. And so she does manage her escape, but she ends up into the hands of this underground cult that are adamant to bring about the ancient religion. And so she's a key part of that. Her child is a key part in bringing all that back up. And she'll have to give up something very important. Well, she has to give up like her essence, who she is, in order to save her child. So how far is she going to go? And at the end of the day, she's going to need to reconnect with whoever, you know, she gave up, to reclaim her child. And she's going to have the help of 3 wolves that are going to help her do that. It's always 3 and it's always wolves. So yeah, so she's going to have the help of 3 wolves to reconnect with who she is, her identity, and figure out how strong she is. And she's going to have, like I said, the help of 3 wolves. And in all of that chaos that's happening, so we have the evil King Lorcan that's after her, wants to kill her, wants to get her because she holds these secrets to the universe. And we have artificial intelligence that plays a part in here. And it's basically, we're kind of navigating through all of that. So that's the best I can do in explaining the book. But it's basically the root of it all. When I first started writing this book, it kind of all stemmed from a quote from Einstein, where he had said, I don't know how we will fight World War III. No, I know how we will fight World War III, anyways, along those lines, but I do know that World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. To me, that was super interesting, because so I don't know if you're a fan of Mad Max or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I love Mad Max, because part of what I really, really liked when I was watching those movies and all that is, so we're in the future, but we have like all these remnants of the past that are more futuristic than the future. And that's what I wanted to build on in this book. So I really wanted for the reader to go through and feel this tribal history, and then these characters find these pieces, these artifacts that are more evolved than what they have as weapons and things like that, but they don't know what to do with it. So they find these phones, you know, and for them, it's like a mirror. And so it was tough to write, because I was just like, I can't use the lingo, today's lingo, because they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a challenge, but I really, really enjoyed discovering that. So if you're like a reader that loves tribal history, that loves that kind of interaction, then definitely this book, I think you'll enjoy it, because that's part of the reason why I started writing it. And then on the other hand, I also wanted to mix, like, it was important for me to, because it's part dystopian also. So it was important for me to explore. So if we are in the future and the remnants of the past are influencing, you know, the future, then we have AI right now. So how will AI be a part of our lives if it's all destroyed, you know?
Yeah.
So that was also part of it. So artificial intelligence plays a big role in the book, and it's kind of like, how can I put it? It's kind of like there's a lots of twists and turns and unexpected twists and turns. So
Excellent, excellent. And then you've got the book as well, which is a prequel. It's kind of short stories that are set in the same universe as well.
right. Well, it's not that, well, it's the same universe. It's not the same time period. So basically it's like kind of the events that led up to the apocalypse in She Runs with Wolves. So basically in She Runs with Wolves, everything has been destroyed. We're living in a desert, winter wasteland, and it's kind of, like I said, similar to Mad Max, but instead of, you know, desert, we're in the winter. And they're fighting, you know, amongst themselves for power. So basically, you know, that's the gist of it. And the prequel is basically, we're in like the contemporary times, and like, so cities are still there, everything, but we're kind of starting to see the moment where the cracks start to appear, where the, you know, everything looks bright and shiny, but underneath it all, it's not perfect, and kind of what led to the downfall of society. And
Awesome.
that one's free. It's it's on Amazon, and it should be free. So
Yeah. So what's next in I mean, obviously your end game is you want to develop it for screen, but is there more books to come in this?
yeah, there is definitely. So I don't know if there'll be 2 or 1 more book. I definitely 1 more book, just to close all the unanswered questions in the first one, because it does end a bit on a cliffhanger. So I do answer some of the questions in the first book, but there are still open-ended questions that will be answered in the second book. So I'm currently outlining the second book. It's not written yet, but my outlines are pretty much like full-blown drafts. I really outline until it's like a proper book. But yeah, so definitely 1 more book, and then we'll see, because it's so hard to put anything into film these days, and the scene, like the cinema scene and all that is changing right now, and I'm kind of getting older and kind of not in touch with what's happening. So we'll see. Right now, I'm really enjoying writing the books. And I do have other projects. I am working with some directors and for different projects for cinema, and so we'll see where that leads. But yeah, definitely writing the sequel for She Runs with Wolves.
So and are you aiming to get that one out in 2022, or is it just continually working on it for the next while until it's finished?
Yeah, that's another good question. I'm a really slow writer, and that's so not my YouTube, but my internet presence. I don't know how people put out books every 3 months. It's just, it boggles my mind. I'm like, how is that possible? You must be constantly like in front of your screen 10 hours a day writing. Like, I can't do that. I'm unfortunately not made that way. And so yeah, so the plan is to get it out for 2022, at the end of 2022, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not putting any kind of pressure on myself. I found that if I'm glued to the screen for, because it's so easy, right? It's so easy to wake up in the morning, get the kids out, and then sit in front of your screen, not have lunch, not have any kind of break. And then it's like 4 o'clock, the kids get home, and you're like, you know, I've been on the screen. And I remember getting really depressed. Like, I was feeling like really like, this is too much. It's heavy. And so I realized I needed to kind of have a balance. So I can't put out a book every 3 months. So we'll see. It took me a few years to write this one, and hopefully it won't take me as long now that I know the ropes and everything, because this was my first book, and I do I am an indie author, so I did everything myself. So it was a big learning curve. And you know, as I said before, because my background was in filmmaking, I thought I could write a book, but it's like two different beasts. So
yeah.
So I had to reteach myself how to write and how to write a book, and I still have learning to do. So we'll see. But the plan is 2022.
2022. Okay, I'll look forward to it. And where can everyone find you on the internet? What's your and all your social media links, and for people that are listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, all of the links will be in the show notes. But where can we find you?
Super easy. At Kimberly T Hennessy, there's no E, so it's Kimberly LYT Hennessy SSY .com, and that's my website. And most people, the more engagement, where I have the most engagement is with my newsletter. So that's where, you know, I connect. I write a newsletter once a month, and it's basically the different shows and things that I'm reading at the time and what's happening and all that. And people really connect, and they write to me. Like, I don't know, recently, are you a big fan of Dune?
I am, yeah. I've not seen a movie.
No, okay. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think we can rent it now through streaming. So I think that's just what I'm going to do, because we're kind of in a semi-curfew at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's it. So unfortunately, but yeah, definitely I envy you, because it was just like, I was like, I can't wait. And as soon as it was out, I was like at the movies, and I was just like the whole time. And I didn't realize, because my husband's like, he didn't read the books. So he was like, it's pretty slow. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? This isn't slow. But now in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, maybe it is pretty slow for people that didn't read the book. So, but yeah, no, it's amazing. It's so good. Denis Villeneuve did such an amazing job. He's like the best. He's so good at adaptations, this guy. I'm so envious. But it's really good. So like, I talk about that, and I have that same kind of enthusiasm in my newsletter. So a lot of people, you know, they're like, oh, I saw it too, and it's good. So that's where I really connect. But you can also find me on Facebook at Kimberly T Hennessy author. I do a bit of Instagram, but like I said, I'm a bit of an old lady. And I'm not good with social media. I'm not the best. So that's it. But those are the best places where you can connect. And if you do, like, let's say you know, you're curious about the book, I did put out a short film. So there's a trailer on my website, so people can go and check out the trailer. So, and it was made professionally, so with professionals.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed. We've gone way over the normal length that we usually do for this, but we could probably go for even longer. So,
well, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I really enjoyed it. It's so nice talking with the like-minded people and creation and creativity and all that. So, thank you so much again for having me. And anytime you want to chat, I'm here.
Yes, that'll be great. And for everyone that's been watching with us until the end, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.